Okay.
That way we can, Kari, that way we can add it to the YouTube channel, and then we can share what section 509 is doing as well. That would be awesome.
I guess I'm still a little farther back with our vendor on that one. I'm not much of a media specialist at this point.
Oh, we do that a lot. Well, the ASQ Innovation Technical Community has a YouTube channel, so that every time we record a webinar with one of our guests, we can put it up there, and then we post to our My ASQ area and then link the two in our e-blasts, etc. So it's kind of a way to get virality. We make a discussion after the fact and kind of drive awareness about the topic area and try to get more people involved and focused on it.
Well, I applaud your efforts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're gonna, it's 6:27. We're gonna be waiting just a few more minutes before we get started to hopefully let a few more people join. Thanks for being patient.
Yes, and we always love to know what brought you out tonight. So if you want to put in the chat, just maybe if you have a question, an early question, or if it's the topic, or if you wanted to discuss something in particular, just in case it's not in a slide, so I can make sure we're reaching to you and having a dialogue on that, please.
It is 6:30 and I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Carrie Repka. I am ASQ 509's program chair for this year. I want to thank you for coming out tonight for our presentation for the Cyber Special Interest Group. And just to put in a little plug for those of you who are local to our Washington, D.C. area, we are having a meet and greet at the Carrabba's Grill in Bowie next Thursday night at 6:30. So we would love to have you come out and join us and meet us there so we can just kind of network and just connect with everybody else in the quality community. And we just thank you for being here again. And if you don't have your name showing as part of your sign in, please make sure to put your name in the chat so that you can get attendance and get credit, your recertification unit credit for being here tonight. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to our cyber special interest group chair, Arvinder Singh, and let him go ahead and greet you for tonight. Arvinder? Arvinder, are you talking on mute? Well, Rhonda, Arvinder may have gotten called away. I don't want to go ahead and keep you. So everybody, please meet Dr. Rhonda Farrell. She is our expert for tonight. And I'm going to be acting as your moderator. So if you can go ahead and, unless Rhonda asks for questions, if you could please put your questions in the chat, and that way we'll go ahead and be able to make sure that all of your questions get answered by the time we leave. And it looks like Arvinder's having some difficulties, so hopefully we'll give him a little chance to greet you all and say hello once he gets joined back up at the end of Dr. Farrell's presentation. All right, so without further ado, Dr. Farrell.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Innovation Technical Community and Section 509's discussion on unleashing the power of next generation threat intelligence. I'd love this to be an interactive session with each and every one of you, no matter where your experience lies across the CTI continuum. If you're new and novel, we'll have some definitions and some information that hopes to help drive awareness and engagement for each and every one of you. If you're more seasoned and you want to offer us your experiences, both with the technologies as well as on the program and the strategy side of the house, we would love to hear that too. So feel free to jump right in or post a question or comment in the chat. I'll try to keep up with each of you real time so that we get your feedback and we get any question, comment, concerns, or story that you'd like to share. So again, I'm Dr. Rhonda Farrell, Fire Chair of ASQ 509, as well as the Innovation Technical Community, and I'm an innovation champion. A part of my background is applying innovation management to organizations and enterprises. They could be as little as a solopreneur, a small, medium, or large-sized organizations, as well as community groups and nonprofits such as ASQ. And really what we're trying to do within that spectrum is bring people together. So we have our normal consulting triad in innovation that we look at: people, process, technology. And the more we can drive awareness and engagement and collaboration and communicate with our people, with our leaders, with our executives, with our workforces, the better off the programs are, the better off our organizations are, and the better off we are at from a collaborating across the various organizational units to make great things happen, whether that's outcomes and results, whether that's performance, whether that's greater, deeper, better cybersecurity for internal and external, as well as heightened quality outcomes and excellence and performance outcomes. So tonight, cybersecurity is really this phenomenal strategic area that is maturing, that is changing, that has drivers on the strategy side, that has drivers internationally, that has drivers on the policy side. It also has its roots in legislation and regulation, as well as being a functional area where we can apply really interesting technological innovations as well as process innovation. So we love to highlight and showcase our cybersecurity programs and our infrastructures because they really dovetail the people, process, and technology so well to showcase what's going on in each of those areas. With regard to innovation and cybersecurity, one of the things I'd like to direct your attention to, if you're not already familiar with it or harnessing it, might be the Cybersecurity Excellence Builder that Baldrige has put out. So we have a Baldrige Performance Excellence Framework. We have cybersecurity, which is typically being driven from our NIST 800 3X series or 5X series or our NIST IRs. And what we're really trying to do is show that cybersecurity is a continuum. We have a level 1, a level 2, a level 3, a level 4, a level 5 with regard to how mature are our programs, and therefore how mature can we, or how much can we increase our security postures through harnessing and using tools and methodologies such as the Cybersecurity Excellence Builder. So if that's not in your library, or if that's not in your repertoire of information that you can go back to and reference from a change management and an innovation perspective, I invite you to look at there. We're lucky in that NIST has so much information, not only with regard to the enterprise risk management framework, as well as our security controls and the dovetailing of cybersecurity and privacy, but they are really looking at harmonizing IRs and standards across many facets of an organization. And the good thing is that a lot of them are making reference back to our NIST control frameworks and other NIST IRs or other NIST documents that speak to the technological protocols, etc. So we saw that with the nascent cloud security maturation cycle, where first they need to define it, then they need to make a reference architecture, then they need to really work with the stakeholders across different levels of government and commercial, as well as other nonprofits, to really look at what the best practices are with regard to adoption and utilization. Then of course, security, right? So we have not only NIST, but many organizations, nonprofit organizations that were stood up to help secure the cloud and have really been able to push this concept of threat intelligence forward in so many different areas. So again, I am an innovator. I'm a cybersecurity expert, as well as having roots in quality management and change management. My nickname is the Swiss Army knife. So we will go forward tonight. If I don't have any questions yet tonight, what we'll discuss is really for those not familiar with cyber threat intelligence. We'll have definitions, we'll talk about the threat intelligence ecosystem, and then we'll lay out a roadmap for the future of what they're doing in the technological space, as well as in the frameworks, attack models, etc. We'll also look at best practices, what they're doing to better leverage machine language and machine learning and artificial intelligence to help with their predictive capabilities. We'll look at trends. What are they doing to be able to share, right? Typically, as I'm sure you as cybersecurity and other enterprise and organization executives and leaders and staff understand and know it's very difficult, has been very difficult to get organizations and enterprises to disclose, because when they disclose, i.e. that could have a detrimental effect on their stock prices, that could have a detrimental effect on their reputation, et cetera, right? So you've seen a multi-decade focus on how do we create transparency? How do we create this safe place for disclosure so that inadvertently they're not disclosing something so that they could get re-attacked and re-hacked from a different attack vector, if you will, right? So we have to be careful of how, what, where, and to what level we disclose and how we share that information across organizations. And early on, we saw that there was specific ISACs, et cetera, that were industry specific, that whose function in life was to create this safe sharing infrastructure so that information could be shared across governmental entities if the right contractual agreement and clearances were in place to be able to do that. And then we saw commercial really coming into the forefront to be able to pull from their very domestic and internationally their knowledge of network activities so that they could then better sell, license that intelligence information back into commercial and governments, and B, to help put in to be another layer of intelligence that was additive for those organizations that may not have access to the original ISAC related threat feeds, et cetera. Then we saw the move to really a desire to aggregate and create open source feeds so that small businesses and solopreneurs and entrepreneurs would still have a basis to pull information from. Susie, am I including privacy breaches? Yes, so I think good point. I think we'll talk about the constructs in a little bit, Susie, so that you can understand the entire spectrum, right? And I think to your point, if we look at how protocols, frameworks, methodologies have been rolled out, as well as how the legal system has put in protections, we'll see that it's a yes and. We have the regulatory and legal system really requiring that we now notify consumers, right? So we have to publicly state that an organization has been breached given certain requirements, certain type of organization with a certain scope of breach occurring. We have to publicly address that. They have to communicate that to each of the parties whose information was breached. They have to understand from an impact analysis what the level of potential detriment to the organization or the individual is, given that the depth of the breach. And then we have, right, the taxonomies that were put into place so that we can standardize and modularize on the technology tools, scanning tools, et cetera, to say what is a vulnerability, what is a weakness, how do we identify them, how do we classify them, how do we know if those exist within our in our technology infrastructure, and then how do we go about remediating them if we do have those within our infrastructure. So we we identified, they basically designed and developed an SCAP protocol that was able to inquire of the control and other configuration settings on applications, pieces of technologies, etc. They then apply the CVE, the CWE, the scoring constructs to be able to rate and rank, well, identify and then rate and rank and make visible the extent of the findings of those scanning tools. So you actually have both kind of maturing in parallel over time. One is, of course, externally, you are making public the fact that something occurred, and then internally, you're utilizing multiple pieces of technology within your organization to understand from an incident identification and response perspective what's happening and what's occurring. But then, to your point, as it is occurred or as it has occurred, you also now have these frameworks and structures in place to exchange that information and transport those information to other parties in a way that they can consume it and then apply it to their infrastructure so they can understand and really understand how they can prioritize for remediation given their technological rollout and their current security posture. So it's a work in progress. Something happens, we collect intelligence about what happened, when it happened, who is at the root of that, and we'll show you some ways that some innovations that have occurred that enable organizations to do that with very high assurance levels. And then they have to then choose how they're going to control from a defense in depth, and then what they're going to share, right? Are they obligated by law to disclose certain activities, or are they choosing to be a partner with regard to cyber threat intelligence sharing, so that the totality of the whole who have partnered is able to then use those feeds to heighten their security posture. So I hope that answered the question for you, Susie. The next thing is really cyber threat intelligence not only is harnessing AI and ML, et cetera, but it's really birthing new technological solutions and capabilities, right? So the more we learn, the more we understand where our capabilities gaps exist from a technological and a process standpoint, then the more innovation we birth in order to remediate that to the next level. Sometimes it's a additive capability to something exists. Sometimes we're making an entirely new platform or a new form factor or a new aggregated entity that enables us to optimize functions in one embedded system. No, I'm just talking. So thank you for Duke. I was just trying to set the table for our next discussions, Duke, and pointing to our trends here. So the second point, harnessing an innovation roadmap, is really the evolution of the technology, and the evolution of the processes is what's really driving this further innovation roadmap. And we'll see that AI and ML play a huge part in being able to identify and in some case automate remediation actions so that we can contain something prior to it being an overall breach or escape, if you will, of valuable organizational data that would then have to be reported through legal means. And then again, we'll talk about what does it mean to be an organization executive who has to make the call of where to invest what could be a slim budget. Do I only focus on technologies? Do I invest in some people, some process, some technology, and the cyber threat intelligence can help them quantify and qualify those decisions so that they're able to make better investment decisions for their organizations. And then, of course, we want to look at a little bit about the cyber team, right? As we're advancing in MI and AL, as we're advancing in our DevSecOps, as we're advancing in some of our other cyber technologies, who do we need to be hiring for? Who do we need to be upskilling? What is going to be the next set of credentials and certifications that are going to be most important to our federal and state and local governments, et cetera? And then, of course, what's some of the up and coming nascent technologies that you all may be working with and would like to share as well. So again, context. So for those who are not familiar with cyber threat intelligence, here's a definition. And really what it helps us do is it standardizes the conversation about what and how we're examining network audit and security technology logs, etc., so that we can understand truly what we're dealing with from a hack and attack and security event standpoint. So you'll see in a little bit, in fact, I'll share one thing. Typically, as we're examining cyber threat intelligence or other malicious activities, we're most concerned with an actor or an adversary. We're concerned with the capabilities that they have and they may unleash against our organization. And that's not just external entities, because we could have external actors or we can have internal, what we call insider threat actors that may harness our own infrastructure for purposes that could harm economically and or digitally harm our organization. We also look at infrastructure, right? Not only the capability, so the tools, techniques, and tactics that they're using in their attack scenarios, but the infrastructure that they have and the reliability and the resiliency and the sheer volume of that infrastructure. And then we want to understand from a victim perspective, who are they really targeting and for what reason, right? Is it from a cyber crime perspective? Is money the root of why they're doing what they're doing? Or is it for notoriety? Is it for operational disruption? Is it for some other means? And so we have a way of being able to, for lack of a better word, fingerprint, understand the attack patterns that are occurring, and then be able to identify with some level of assurance who is the likely attacker in that case. And so I'll share with you some of that in just a minute as soon as we get our context set. So we have our basic definition of cyber threat intelligence, and then we have our ecosystem. So in cyber threat intelligence area, we have a taxonomies, right? So our taxonomies are going to be the ways that we categorize attacks, that we categorize and vulnerabilities, that we categorize weaknesses, that we categorize vulnerabilities, that we categorize configuration related things, that we categorize threats, etc. The standards are really what helps us understand. Well, they help us make sense of that particular functional and operational and technological area. Two, they share with us the why behind, right? Why is it necessary to standardize and modularize around this? What is the emphasis for the organization for potentially adopting and utilizing, and what's the gain? What's the outcomes and results that they're going to get through utilization of that or compliance? And then what it also does is it standardizes and normalizes the structures with which we exchange information across organizations or across technological platforms or within various portions of our processes, so that we all can talk the same language and identify and make visible that vulnerabilities, weaknesses, threats, indicators of compromise, etc. And then our metadata is how we go about doing that, right? So the structure gives us the format, and then the metadata that we then apply to that structure and format is really helps us to create enriched intelligence and enriched feeds so when we do make those visible in a dashboard or a scorecard or as the output of a scanning tool, etc., we are able to then interact with it. We are better able to understand the technological platforms and components that are involved, as well as the attack pattern, as well as perhaps an identification of who the ultimate attacker was in various cases. The next is really the roadmap. And as we look at where we're moving from and where we're moving to, we've seen over time, again, from these very almost siloed pillars of industry specific threat sharing agreements and partners to now a more open model where we're standardizing and modularizing and making available things that are open source, given our new nascent, I'll call them nascent frameworks and things that we'll discuss in a little bit, platforms that help us ingest from many different partners, analyze, and then share back out across the spectrum so that everybody's security posture can potentially be raised. So we call that, and not only that, but bring in information from our other technological platforms that give us like security event information, like our logs, like our SIMs, like our firewalls, like other intrusion detection and prevention devices, so that we can then fuse all of that information together to make the intelligence deeper and richer as we share that across our partner base. We also see advances in our attack frameworks, right? We always we'll talk to that in just a moment, but those have been maturing, adding new categories, adding new information with regard to what they call techniques aligned to each of the categories as they learn and as they aggregate and or encompass more information. And then last but not least, we look at we see a vast focus on innovative technologies, right? With DevSecOps, et cetera, the advent and stand up of the JAIC, really focusing on, specific use cases, and now the integration of MI and ML across multiple technologies platforms in many different footprints, if you will, and in many different applications that are easily accessible to not only federal and state government entities, but commercial and the small mom and pop shops and academia and nonprofits that need these protections just as well. So what is the value add that cyber threat intelligence brings to an organization? Why is it necessary, and what does it enhance with regard to our traditional cybersecurity operations related scanning, reporting, remediation, and response and remediation activities? Well, first of all, again, it helps us to standardize and normalize on who the actors are, right? Internal and external. It helps us standardize on what could their intent be? Why are they doing what they're doing? It helps us better understand, again, their capabilities. What types of tools? I think we saw in the news that one of our international partners, very long-term techniques, TTPs, was discovered and removed, right? That had been in operation for decades, I believe. So it's that type of cyber threat intelligence sharing that allows federal government and commercial and others to uncover what the capabilities are, what the footprint looks like, what are the breadcrumbs, who is the source actor, attribution, if you will, to be able to then go eradicate from their enterprise infrastructures those the components that enabled them to hack and attack at will, if you will. It also helps us to understand the motivations behind, again, why they're doing what they're doing. And then it enables us to better understand how they are gaining access to the organizations and enterprises that are their intended targets. So on the flip side, right, now that we are standardizing and normalizing and understanding this better, because we're able to create cyber threat intelligence feeds that contains each of these elements. Now we have every organization that is consuming those threat intelligence field now has a higher level threat visibility. So what does that mean? That means we can better put in place defense in depth mechanisms to ensure that we can have correct levels of availability, that we are not having issues with integrity, that we are protecting our confidentiality in our transactional systems, etc. And also helps us reduce complexity, right? Because it's even difficult for the big enterprises, right, to consume all of the information that really can help them understand what's going on. Not only do they have to consume it, they have to analyze it, and they have to make sense of that from an operational standpoint. So they have to look at how security events are moving in, through, and out from their organizations. And they have to look at people, they have to look at process, they have to look at all of those technological components. They have n number of sources they have to pull information from logs, from intermediary technological platforms, etc. And then they have to be able to respond to it, right? They either have to put in place people controls, process controls, and technological controls to make sense of it and be able to respond to it in a timely manner so that they don't have downtime, so that they don't have data integrity or other integrity issues. They don't have confidentiality losses. So the reduction in complexity through just being able to consume a consolidated threat intelligence feed gets them further faster. It also helps them to better manage risk, right? Because if they don't have to design, develop, source all of that their own, now they have to go to 1, 2, 3 aggregation points to be able to consume that information from, of course, in addition to their own infrastructure workflows that they have in place to give them real-time information. And then it, of course, ultimately what that allows them to do is to make that proper investments to better secure their business. So best practices, we talked about from a taxonomy perspective, right? What, why they're putting in place these taxonomies is because they want organizations and leaders and executives and staff to be able to wrap their head around something, right? If we can standardize and normalize and create a hierarchy, then we're able to drive awareness, we're able to drive understanding, and then we're able to drive adoption and utilization. So you saw this, you know, taxonomy will start with the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and we'll talk about the diamond model and then the common, the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. But at its core, the MITRE ATT&CK taxonomy, if you will, classification is 16 different categories of ways that hackers and attackers basically use to enter into an organization's technology infrastructure, and the techniques that they use within each of those categories to get information or exfiltrate information. So for example, the MITRE ATT&CK model helps us understand that some hackers and attackers are not in there to disrupt or to steal something, but they're in there to basically provide a reconnaissance. So think of them as scouting, right? We want to scout for information with regard to what the enterprise is doing, and we want to be able to report back what is the technological platforms they're using, what is the enterprises and organizations capabilities, what we do that through active scanning, we do that through getting access to host information, we do that through active gathering of network information, we do that through phishing of our executives and our workforce. We do that through searching open technical databases, etc. So you get the idea of reconnaissance. The next thing we might do is what they call resource development. Now we want to not only have we figured out how we might enter into the organization, we're going to get a better understanding of how, if we can actually enter, right? So we want to, something called resource development. The intent here is to acquire access to credentials on a platform so that they can then lateral transfer across the enterprise and organization and get access to more information. So resource development, we want to acquire a piece of infrastructure. We want to compromise operational accounts. We want to compromise infrastructure. So that might be rootkitting, that might be putting some application in that allows them to collect security and informational logs, etc. Right? So now not only do they have our network infrastructure, they have they have information on how we name pieces of our technological infrastructure. They may have access to user accounts and credentials, etc. Right? So now it's just a case of what does my right and left node look like, and what does it hold, and what does it do, and does it hold what they'll call, you know, is it something related to key cyber terrain? Is it a database that holds financial information? Is it a database that holds all of my user accounts? Is it a database that holds all of the information about my intellectual property, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So they're going to be looking, they conducted recon, now they're coming in and they want to understand what's the most valuable technological resources that they can then fully infiltrate against, and then look at how they can start exfiltrating that information without that being seen and noticed by the enterprise and organizational entities. Some of the other categories are initial access, execution, persistence, privilege escalation, defense evasion, credential access, etc. You get the idea. It's a set of categories. They use a set of techniques within each of these categories. By normalizing and standardizing, it enables us to exchange information with other parties in these cyber threat intelligence feed called indicators of compromise, so that we understand what is, if it's actor A versus actor Z, what spectrum of capability do they have? How far infiltrated are they across our enterprise and organization, and how many different techniques are they leveraging on a continual basis, right? And then basically what that gives you to what level of threats they are, and that then determines the priority of the investments you need to make to either to understand how you're going to remediate and ultimately remove them from your environment. So again, that's the MITRE attack model. The next one is the cyber kill chain. So Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. That is basically a set of steps. And so what we're looking for here is the first thing, much like we saw in MITRE attack characterization, is we have reconnaissance, and then we have weaponization, right? We want to understand reconnaissance is really what we looked at earlier, right? How can we get in? What can we do? Once we get in, what can we place? Is it malware? Is it viruses? Is it something else, right? So we want to be how are we going to hit availability? How are we going to hit integrity? And how are we going to hit confidentiality, or all three at the same time, right? So we use step number 2 called weaponization. How can we drop things across the enterprise and the organization to cause bad things to happen in each of those areas? Then we're going to do delivery, right? So not only do they have to have a vulnerability existing within our organization to be able to exploit, they need then to be able to do the actual exploitation so that they can drop that malware, virus, etc., and have that actually execute and cause the bad stuff. And we call that weaponization, again, step 2, delivery, step 3, exploitation, step 4. Then we have installation, command and control, which is it worked, that installation worked, and now they can remotely control and compromise and use that piece of infrastructure to do further either reconnaissance or further disruption within the organization. Again, according to what it is they're attempting to do. Is it for monetary means, ransomware? Is it for operational disruption or some other purpose? Is it stealing and espionage and intellectual property theft, etc., from a competitive perspective? And then we look at kind of actions or objectives of that particular, again, that particular hacker or attacker. The last is called the diamond model, and this is a 4-factor model that just looks at adversary, capability, victim, and infrastructure, and it really puts a set of metadata around that, a timestamp, the result, the methodology, the resources they use. Again, they standardize the elements and they standardize what they're capturing, so that when they create the finding, if you will, the event, that when you're able to consume it, you have standard elements that you're able to read, collect, analyze, and then take action on in some way, shape, or form. So that's, again, our taxonomies and our attack frameworks. Some of the cyber threat intelligence taxonomies, additional information you can find information about by going to, you just need to look up something. If you Google making security measurable, it's a MITRE page that is phenomenal about explaining the various components of cybersecurity. It starts with software assurance, and it's inclusive of application security, it's inclusive of asset management, supply chain risk management, but two things that were vulnerability management, patch management, malware detection, intrusion detection, system assessment, configuration management. But the two things we're going to look at, they have a links to, and it's called cyber intelligence threat analysis and cyber threat information sharing, right? So if we go to cyber intelligence threat analysis, you're going to get an overview of the two languages and transport mechanisms, or excuse me, one language that helps creates the structure around how cyber threat information can be exchanged, and that's called STIX, S-T-I-X, Structured Threat Information Expression, and it's really an XML based format that allows you to put a wrapper around cyber threat information so that, again, you can consume, analyze, and make sense of this. It also builds on something called cyber observables that are operational cyber events that are defined within something called the CyBOK, Cyber Observable Expression Language. So again, MITRE has created this suite of XML-based structures that allow you to describe, structure, and share cyber threat information across different organizations, across different technological platforms for conception, for collection, analysis, and ultimately remediation actions. The next thing we'll talk about and look at is called cyber threat information sharing. So while STIX is the basis for the structure of how we identify that threat intelligence data, there's something called TAXII, T-A-X-I-I, which is Trusted Automated Exchange of Indicator Information. It's the transport mechanism that allows that STIX information to be shared across technological platforms. And so again, if you go to Google and search making security measurable, you'll find all that information and more with regard to STIX, TAXII, and then also the common attack pattern enumeration and classification, KPAC, really operationalizing their attack framework. You'll see references to Octave, you'll see references to COBIT, you'll see references to the Open Threat Taxonomy, ANISA Threat Taxonomy, CMU's TOSCR, right? Really, all these are different taxonomies that allow us to understand threat intelligence information and consume and act upon it. So I'll leave that to your all's reading. Just know there is more than one taxonomy. There is more than one attack framework, but they are standardizing and normalizing. And as you'll see when we get to our technology component, they readily harness and utilize all of these in some way, shape, or form according to enterprise and organizational preference. So again, TAXII is the transport mechanism STIX is this structured language for describing, so that can be shared, stored, and analyzing. And then the taxi really helps us create this visualization mechanism. Excuse me, STIX, this figure that you see to your right of the visualization, that's a mechanism, that's a figure coming from STIX. So again, structured threat information expression. And it's really bringing together 9 different constructs for you all to learn about and become more familiar with if you're not already there. So it describes what an observable is. It describes what an indicator is, or the patterns that you might be seeing within your enterprise. It helps you decide if a security incident or an event is indicative of an adversary action. It helps make sense of the tactics, techniques, and procedures that the adversaries are using. Give me 1 second, please.
Dr. Farrell knew she might be interrupted, and she'll be right back. So hang with us for just a couple minutes while she returns.
Thank you, Gary.
Arvinder, if you're on right now and you want to go ahead and say anything about the Cyber SIG group, then go right ahead until she returns.
No, this is actually, even my jaws are totally dropped listening to this, starting from the first slide. I mean, as everyone around the Beltway or whichever industry we all belong to, this is the hottest topic. And this is so true that nobody wants to discuss it and talk about it. And everyone understands there may be implications. And it just, I don't know, this is just an eye opener for people who are very new to this area. Thank you, Dr. Farrell. We were just.
I am back. Sorry for the disruption. Needed to assist somebody with something. Okay, so we were covered observables and indicators. Now we are at adversary TTPs. Then we talk about exploit targets, courses of action, campaigns that those attackers may be undertaking given our knowledge of the TTPs, the threat actors, so identifying, right, attribution of one or more threat actors, and then reporting out on the knowledge that was gained through that collection and analysis. So that's really the benefits, if you will, of harnessing these various standards, protocols, and the metadata that is produced through each of those. Next are the trends, right? So what we really are seeing, again, we started, multi-decades ago with this being hidden, with this not being transparent, with it being somewhat siloed and isolated at the industry level. Commercial was not yet then, to the best of my knowledge, monetizing that threat intelligence and disseminating it out for a commercial consumption, sale and consumption. And thus we had this, in reality, a very disparate set of capabilities with which to understand what was going on in our infrastructures, and then being able to respond to that and invest appropriately, right? If you did not have knowledge, access to that information, and or you were not able to purchase that, you were then reliant upon your own infrastructure of what you can purchase and support, and basically the whatever commercial capabilities or staff capabilities you could field with which to best support your organization from a response and remediation standpoint. So basically, I think what you see now is, for lack of a better term, leveling the playing field. Right now, having more of that cyber threat intelligence being able to be disseminated out, and having additional enterprise and organization sizes and types being able to consume that in order to help their organizations become more secure and or take remediation action faster, and or invest in additional capabilities proactively given the information that's being provided. So we also now see this integration of governance, risk, and compliance. We used to have separate governance dashboards that was not necessarily integrated with our cybersecurity RMF scanning tools, right? Or it was convoluted and we had to do a lot of data translation, or we had to do a lot of customized development. And so now I think what you're seeing in the ecosystem and through our technology deployments and development and innovations is really this bringing together of GRC, cyber threat intelligence, and our risk framework so that it's seamless across our organization for our executives to harness and use, our leaders to harness and use, so that they get a much more real-time view of what's actually occurring across their enterprise, and can then again take remediation and or preventative investment action. We also have a move towards this MISP. It used to just stand for malware sharing platform, but now we're seeing that it's this threat intelligence sharing platform, and there's multiple iterations. It's not a one size fits all MISP premise, but just think of it as a set of MISP offerings that have at its core open source threat intelligence capabilities that allow them to consume sticks and other structured information, so that, again, small, medium, academia, local governments, community groups, nonprofits can be just as aware and heighten their security posture as well. So again, you see that really it started in the 2011 time period and is continuing to mature and grow. If you're in the DC metro area, I'm sure over the last decade, you are probably been involved with working groups that is not only looking at it from a standards and a structure standpoint, but also from a technological and a working group perspective as well. The next is the innovation roadmap. What will the future hold? And what we're seeing is really more along the lines of what we saw early on in the days of SIMs and firewalls, right? We saw static instantiations, but then we also saw dynamic instantiations where it would be able to dynamically respond to security events and take an action. It could close a port. It could close down a technological platform. It could, take other actions to be able to ensure that availability, integrity, or confidentiality was not harmed within the enterprise once a certain event occurred. So we're also seeing that the cyber threat intelligence platforms have more and more of this dynamic nature to them to automate some of this response capability. And then we're also seeing, I'll identify one such focus area, which is CrowdSec, which is really this driving to a free open source global threat intelligence platform, right? So moving away from those siloed, closed, you have to pay for it, you have to be a specific partner, you have to have certain clearance levels and certain assurances that you will not, forward share, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to now this more, again, free, open, global platform. So if that's not on your radar, happy to share that with you. And then, we look at how our executives and entities who may not have a wide experience base, how do they even approach some of the metrics to understand how they are to make a strategic investment in a piece of technology that could help their enterprise the most, right? Either heighten from a security posture standpoint or provide the correct levels of defense and depth against whatever that, availability, integrity, confidentiality issues are that they are particularly facing given their industry segment, given the way they've operationalized their infrastructure. So, some of the metrics to that could be briefed to your executives if they're not already there, or to your staff, et cetera. Mean time to respond, mean time to resolution, reduction in organizational downtime, increase in uptime, just the reverse of that, improved employee productivity. That, that's one is if we have this credential harvesting and abuse, right? We'll have employees being locked out, employees not being able to access technology platforms, employees not being able to do the thing that they're ultimately contracted or paid to do. And so we have this notion of enhanced productivity because of the preventative technologies and processes, et cetera, that we're putting in place to heighten that security posture. So those are the trends that we're seeing going forward. Now, some of our key considerations for implementation, if you're not there, is really about, what we don't take cyber threat intelligence as an ecosystem on lightly, right? We need to put a wrapper, a program planning and performance management and monitoring wrapper around it, just like we would do with anything else we're fielding in our infrastructure, right? It is holistic, it is integrated, it is multifaceted, right? You saw the level of complexity with regard to attacks matrix, protocols, frameworks, methodologies, the technologies, the structures that are used even to describe the context and the way that information is exchanged, let alone visualized and operated on in some way, shape, or form, right? So I think, looking at the research for this cyber threat intelligence going forward, what they're really looking to do is mature out how you're planning for this programmatically and performance wise, right? Really look to how it's aligning to your strategic cybersecurity related strategic goals and objectives, the other initiatives that you are fielding, the other financial investments that you're making across your enterprise, and be able to align it and use the quantitative and qualitative information that's being produced in order to help you make stronger investment decisions there. They want you to be cognizant of the fact that they're, the first, second, and third party sources for cyber threat intelligence, and really what is at the root of that is how much can you trust that party to provide information that's going to be of a quality level, and that's ultimately going to be reliable for you to consume and act upon. So you want to make sure those are well-known, well-trusted sources for you to consume and make, especially if you're going to be making dynamic types of response activities. Then, of course, we need to be looking at the collection, the storage, the automation and analytics around cyber threat intelligence, the visualization mechanisms that were going to be used. What other data tools do we need to help us understand what we're collecting? How else can we slice and dice this to make sense of it for our organization to be able to prioritize what's most important that will help us remediate the greatest amount of threat or actual footprint within our enterprise infrastructure, right? So in some cases, they're already there, they've been there, and how do we eradicate versus how do we posture ourselves in case X, Y, or Z occurs, right? So there's both a preventative as well as a reactive component to that. And then what is the, once we have collected from others, then we are adding our own enterprise infrastructure information into the mix. Then to what level are we, again, disseminating out, resharing to other parties to use? What's our own evaluation and feedback mechanisms? Again, going back to the trust of the feeds that we're getting from other parties, as well as what we're disseminating out. And then again, who else do we need on our team to make sure that we have the right skills and strengths and capabilities to best harness and utilize some of these novel nascent technologies and taxonomies, structures, etc. So again, from a key considerations for implementation, we're looking again the people, the process, the technology components. It's really up to your own enterprise and organization. Investment choices, are you going equally across all three? Probably not, but you may have a couple technological holes. You may benefit from process integration across. You may, to help you with interoperability, et cetera, or you may have some capability gaps on your security team that can help you go further faster. So it's really up to your enterprise, your organization, how you're going to strategically invest to increase your security posture to the highest level possible and to protect, right? So out of all that, what's next for each of you, right? We really see a huge focus on helping enterprises, organizations, leaders, and staff contextualize and make sense of what they're learning, what's being learned about, what's being shared, and how to harness that for best use within your enterprise or organization. How to, much like we saw in, we see to this day, right, the concept and notion of false positives, right? I want my signal to noise ratio to be high, right? I want to not have non-relevant indicators of compromise if what their intent and elsewise have shown that I'm not likely to be a medium or longer term target, right? So we want to make sense of what those cyber intelligence feeds are showing us, and we want to be able to filter out the noise so that we can focus on enhanced response and remediation and deployment and heightening of our security posture to what's most important to our enterprise at this state of our maturation. And then we want to really look at how we basically, it's the level of complexity of the technological platforms, tools, and services, right? So part of this cyber, again, like I was mentioning earlier, there are so many places within our enterprise. They're on our endpoint devices, they're on our laptops, they're on our desktops, they're in our servers, they're on our network components, they're within our security architecture, they're in our logs, et cetera, right? Where we have to collect, we have to analyze, we have to filter, right? And it's that level of complexity that maybe we filter out something we should have been paying attention to. Maybe it's just overwhelming for our cybersecurity staff and they can't keep up with the velocity or the complexity of the information that they're seeing, right? So cyber threat intelligence is supposed to help us dial down the signal to noise ratio to help us be able to focus with some level of assurity on what we need to be paying attention to so that we can enhance our ability to keep high levels of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And then, of course, we're looking at this whole drafting of CTI playbooks and best practices for, again, if we're small, medium, large, an academic institute, a commercial entity, a community group, a nonprofit, right? We want all of those entity types to be able to harness and utilize to the best extent possible to help increase their cyber capabilities. And then again, fight cyber crime, and then again, rinse and repeat as you learn. So again, that's our innovation take on this, right? From the people side, from the process side, from the technological side, but not only that, from our ability to really mature out the technologies, the taxonomies, the standardized ways of structuring and sharing information and transforming information that allows us to respond at a much quicker pace. So I will now turn it over to the team before we close for our ending announcements. If you have any questions or if you have any comments or even a story about how your organization or enterprises is harnessing cyber threat intelligence capabilities in some way, shape, or form to help your organization mature in the cybersecurity arena. Arvinder, go ahead.
Dr. Farrell, this is one question from a lot of participants. Can they get the hands on this wonderful slides? Because I think what you have summarized in this last 30-40 minutes is probably 50 years worth of work for
yes. I am happy to share, yes, and I am happy to include references so you don't have to hunt around for them either.
Okay. And the second, which is a burning question from my side, is
yes,
understanding 1 or 2 cents about the cybersecurity and understanding even managing a simple security, telling your kids what time they can turn the internet on and what time they can turn the internet off. Are we in the balance? Are we in the innovation phase? Or we are constantly investing more resources just to maturing our cybersecurity boundaries as a nation?
Yeah, so I think good question. So I mean, I think with the advent of MISPs and CrowdSec and the like, right? I think what we're trying to do is level the playing field with regard to, you know, removing some of the pay to play kind of constraints that organizations were facing, right? So, I mean, if we look at the root of what we're trying to do, we're trying to simplify the exchange of cyber threat intelligence so that anyone, right, no matter the type of organizational entity, you have the ability and you have the capabilities and you have standardized and normalized it so they can make it operational within their ecosystem, right? So we're not only aggregating how the information is coming in, right, from a set of trusted authoritative sources, we're now making these accessible, right, in some cases without these very large monetary outlays that were occurring over multiple decades, right? So we're aggregating, we're simplifying, we're making open what used to cost a lot of money, that was very complex, that again was hidden and not made transparent and not shared to all parties, right? So we would have this very disparate operational capability in order to respond, right? A, we didn't know they were there. Two, we didn't know to what extent they were within our infrastructure. And three, we could not respond in a timely manner, right? So hence the ransomware, hence in some cases, the utter destruction of many small businesses, right? And other takedowns of academic organizations, hospitals, schools, and so,
yes.
right? That's really
those are the one which I was thinking, like, because those are the people who develop our people for the future workforce, or the ambassadors to our 2050 or 2075. And those are people who are fighting on the COVID side, developing cancer fighting or other drugs or new techniques. How do they know that they are in a secured environment without like getting more anxiety on the cyber front also? But thank you, Dr. Farrell. And I think I'm going to close my mic and open the floor for the rest of the audience so they can also ask their questions.
Thank you so much, Arvinder.
Does anyone have any additional questions for Dr. Farrell? Just take yourself off mute and ask your question.
Rhonda, there's the constant challenge with cybersecurity that as soon as you get a better defense, they come up with a better attack. Yes. So knowing that we are on, as you mentioned about nascent technologies, we know with AI that just like, because you mentioned about SIMs and SIEMs, we think to how cybersecurity has grown and developed that there's so much activity level, it grew faster than one person could act at a computer. We had to work on automations, and now with AI, we're going to get better automations. But how are we going to now stay ahead of this again? Because the same technology is going to be used by our adversaries as well.
Exactly. I think Michael, you nailed it, right? It's just, it's a never, I mean, it's a constant, right? As fast as we can go from a defense standpoint, they can go from an attack and an attack offense standpoint. And so I think it boils down to one of the reasons why cyber threat intelligence was probably designed and developed in the beginning, right? Is to level the playing field. We can only go as fast to defend, to create a fix for a defect or a security related event as to us knowing about it, right? So somehow we have to have access to the technologies in a lab during development and design. We need the information, cyber threat information that's from those early prototypes, experimentations, et cetera, from our academic research partners, right? So I think what I hear you saying is it's really coming at it from the totality of the entities that we can bring to bear on this space, right? And I think that's really what you see now is commercial partnering with academia, partnering with research labs, partnering with federal government, partnering with other entities, and also reaching back, right? So looking back and saying, if we're able to capture and we're able to remediate and we're able to respond well in, this type of organization, but not that type of organization. What do we need to do from a back to that playbook, back to that best practices, back to that services? I think we probably all remember the days of managed security services, which still exist today. Why? Because people don't have the expertise, right? So I think we go back at it from how much do we want to invest in a technology? How much do we want to invest in the process? How much do we want to invest in the staff? But also, how much do we want to invest in the entities that together can help us solve these problems faster and more cohesively? And that's harnessing all of them. That's harnessing what we're learning on the defense side. That's harnessing what we're seeing on the intelligence side. That's harnessing what we're finding in the R&D labs. That's harnessing what we're learning from in our commercial spaces.
So if I understand right, you really put a lot of faith here in the improved information sharing. It's just, I think, as you touched on, there are organizations that have made an awful lot of money, and I can't imagine that they are going to welcome being pushed aside and the free opportunities of information sharing replacing them. I think Log4j was this major event that happened, and the public only found out about it because of Minecraft patch notes. Otherwise, it was a closely guarded secret that this was on the rise.
So exactly, Michael, you nailed it, right? There's still this tension, if you will, right? If we disclose and make transparent, we can harm our organizational reputation. We can harm our organization's stock prices. We open up the aperture for other hacks and attacks to come through because we might inadvertently be disclosing aspects of our infrastructure. And so I think it's not only about sharing information, it's being able to I'll start with it's a building blocks thing, right? Not every entity does cyber hygiene well, right? Not every entity can even harness the technological innovations that they have in their infrastructure today. Not every entity can harness NIST 853 from a cyber and privacy perspective, right? So we have this very wide continuum still on the network across our global infrastructure in all realms, right? Government realms, local realms, commercial realms, academia, etc., right? And so we really, I think what you see is just educating and helping advise at the executive level as to where they're going to put that investment in cyber threat intelligence, and this more open and transparent sharing is one way to help them create that higher and more mature security posture for their organization. I don't think it's a panacea. I think it's one building block in the cybersecurity repertoire, if you will, that they can harness.
Thank you.
Well, it looks like we're really coming up on the time here. We probably need to redirect you to the information on the screen right now. If you want to contact Dr. Farrell with additional questions, we want to thank you for coming out tonight. I did put in the chat the information about our meet and greet for next week. We hope you will come out and be with us for that. And as far as our RU certificates go, if you need an individual RU, please put in the chat so that we can go ahead and get that sent out to you. Otherwise, as we have done for many years here at Section 509, we keep a database of all of your attendance, and we can issue a report upon your request. Okay, so If you need an individual's certificate, please put your name in the chat and then we'll make sure to send that out to you. Dr. Farrell, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you,
Thank you, Rhonda.
Carrie. Thank you,
Dr.
our
Farrell.
vendor. Yes, and thank you also to our ASQ Innovation Technical Community
Yes.
leaders, especially our chair, Rebecca Mott, who has helped work with the executive leaders to just publish our innovation body of knowledge. We're happy to share that with each and every one of you if you have interest as well. We love to share what we're doing and look forward to further collaborations with our wonderful Section 509 and our community members that are in attendance. Again, I'll send the deck to Arvinder and Carrie, and they can send it out to the registrants and attendees soon hereafter. Again, thank you for the opportunity to work with each and every one of you tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farrell.
Thank you. Good night.
Dr. Farrell, Rhonda. Oops. Did I lose her? Yep. Thank you, everybody.